everyone, Dylan Schumacher, Citadel Defense, and welcome back to another episode of Knight Rider. If you are new here, this is our time when we slow down, we take some time, we talk a lot. A lot of you have told me you listen to these things as, podcasts, and generally just have it on and listen to my voice, while you're doing something of actual value. So I understand that. I'm still struggling with my studio. I don't have like a film studio is the problem. Still can't figure that out. So today we're on this semi-fancy chair that got rejected from my house because my wife didn't like it. So it's out here in my shop, and I don't know, we'll do something with it. And we're on the power rack where we get lots of work done. I don't know. We'll try something else again next time. I can never figure this out. That's not important. You don't really care about that. So today here, we are going to talk about selection events. So first off, what is a selection event, right? So a selection event, like they do this for special forces, right? They do selection events, and usually these are much longer deals, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 weeks kind of things. BUDS from Navy SEALs is a very classic example that you would know of, right? If you make it through BUDS, then you're able to continue to train as a Navy SEAL. The Special Forces, I think, have the Q course. Ooh, I could be wrong on that. Someone knows more than I do about that. But there's a selection event, right, that you go through, and if you make it through, then you can move on to be Special Forces. I don't know what the Marines Recon does. I don't know what there's Ranger School, but I don't know if that really qualifies as a selection event. But essentially, it's a stop gate, right? It's a thing to say, hey, if you make it here, then you can be one of us, and we can keep training you to get here, right? To get to the future place. And if you can't, well, then you can try again next year or whatever. We do this for essentially like sports tryouts. We do this in all kinds of contexts in life, right? We have selection events. So events where you are either chosen to move forward or not. And I've been thinking about this recently, and I've been thinking about, does it make sense in the context of Minutemen and Minutemen teams? Now, first thing I need to say here is there's like the alpha male boot camp thing that kind of happens right now, right? This is not that. So let's talk about that for a second. If you're unfamiliar with this, I think one of the very first episodes I did, maybe it was like the third or fourth one of Knight Rider, we talked about alpha male boot camps. So I got a whole episode on that. You can go back and watch that. But here's the short version, right? This is not that. This is not that because I think those are this over-the-top, trying to give you this full boot camp-like experience where they're yelling at you and they're very drill sergeant-ian in your face and all that kind of thing, okay? And you can pay tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, some of them are really legitimately like 10 grand to go and do that and whatever. So, what we are talking about is a difficult challenge day, usually. Again, we're all normal people. We have jobs. We do stuff other than Minuteman stuff, right? So we're talking about just a day, maybe 2 days, depending on your context and your team, whatever, of physically and mentally challenging events in order to select someone. I'm going to come back to this, okay, for your team. And in our context, what we did is we did a patch-in. We gave them a patch. So I bought some semi-custom patches off a patch provider. They only made like 50 of them, and I bought 25 of them, right? So I have half of the patches. They're not going to be made anywhere else. No one else is going to get it. 25 other random people will, I guess, but I can live with that. So, and then in order to earn your patch and be a patched-in member, you have to make it through, we called it patch-in day, right? We had 3 guys this first go-around because a couple guys were injured, and I told them, do not come. I'll cut the Kamala Harris clip in here. And then one guy got minorly injured during the day, so he dropped, he quit, and then 2 other guys made it, right? And one of the guys who made it, who's probably the most physically fit guy on our team, said that that was the hardest, most physically taxing day he's ever had in his life. That's when you know you're probably hitting near the mark of where it should be, right? Now, I'm not going to discuss so much what to do on your patch-in day. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I'm primarily talking about why would you want to do that, right? What's the value or the idea or the philosophical undergirding of why you would do that? That's what these Knight Rider videos are about. That's where we wax poetical and wax philosophical, and that's probably what you're here for. And if not, well, then again, probably not a good channel for you. So again, I think it's important to talk about how this is not an Alpha Boot Camp, and it's not a Special Forces selection event, right? Let's not try to like copy what is already there. Let's not try to just do something that someone else is doing because that's what the elite guys are doing, so that's what we should do. Let's actually think about this. Let's think about what the purpose would be, what the value would be, if it would even make sense for your team. You know, if you have a bunch of physically unfit guys, maybe it's like, well, it doesn't even make sense because we're all super unfit and it doesn't work. Or maybe it makes total sense because it's like, well, we should do this so that we have something to train for, right? Like, you got to think through the second and third order implications here. So I think, again, not Special Forces here. We're not trying to emulate what they do. Those guys do that professionally. Those guys have time and opportunity to train for weeks and months leading up to those events. Okay, those guys, again, that's their job. They get paid to be soldiers, and so the bar for entry should naturally, of course, be much higher, right? That's part of the deal. So we can't do that. Why? Well, we don't have the resources, right? We don't have acres of government land to build really cool obstacle courses on. We don't have full-time instructors who can devote time and energy and attention to running the courses. We can't afford to feed people over long hauls and have them take 12 weeks off work, and like there's a whole host of practical reasons why we just can't do that. You're a dad with 2 kids at home and you work a 9 to 5 and you have a wife and you're trying to balance many things in life. So these long, intense events just aren't practical. Obviously, you should still be working out. You should still be hitting your squat rack, right? You should still be doing your burpees. You should still be doing stuff to push yourself physically, but training up for a monumental event or weeks-long course, it's just not practical. Okay, I think we've belabored that point enough. So it's not that. We're not professional military. We're not trying to copy what they do. It's not Alpha Boot Camp, right? So this isn't a thing where we want to come and want to yell at people and then we can feel important and they can feel small. Not that that's always what they're trying to do with the Alpha Boot Camp thing, but it can easily be construed that way. We're not trying to make alpha men or have a big, again, like bro jockey yell fest. Like, we're not necessarily doing that. You might want to yell a little bit at some of your guys, but here's one of the major differences here. If you're in a Minuteman team with 3 of your friends or 4 of your friends or 6 of your friends, depending on how lucky and how likable you are, if you have that, right? Well, there's a large degree to which you guys are friends, and that's why you do this. And you need to maintain friendships. So, would it make sense in a quasi Knights of the Round Table organization like Minuteman teams are, for someone to get up and then yell at everyone and make them do grueling things? Maybe not. Some of my guys are going to watch this and be like, Dylan, what are you talking about? You're a jerk. So that's a possibility, but probably not. At the end of the day, it's still pure-ish, right? Yes, hopefully who's ever kind of generally in charge of things you respect. I talk about that in my Minuteman 201 book, so get that and read it if you're curious more about that. But there should be some mutual respect among men there. But point being, it's still pure-ish, right? You're not there to wash people out. You're not there to find the weak guys and get them out of here. You're not there to do that, because if you really dig hard enough, well, you're going to wash all your guys out, right? And what's the point of that? The point of a selection event, to me, is for a team building exercise. So you're going to do a day of physically and mentally challenging things and thereby build team cohesion. And guys earn and again, in my case, you do whatever you want, they earn a patch. They get patched in. And I think there's a lot of team cohesion that can be built in there. One of the things that I think the Alpha boot camps get correct, and one of the things one of the main values to me of a selection event is men want to be measured and accounted worthy. They want to do something challenging and then have gotten through it when there were points throughout the day that they're like, man, I didn't know. We got done at the end of the day and we were debriefing, and the guys told me, they're like, man, there was a couple points where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Like, I don't, and I thought, man, that's perfect for me. That's what I wanted, right? I wanted them to get to that point where they're like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And then they make it. And then they get through it. That's what I want. And if you've done that before in your life, where you've thought, I don't know if I'm going to make it, and then you still make it, the sense of accomplishment is very high. Very high, right? Again, mini example, we always go to working out because it's really easy, but there's been multiple times in my life where I've picked up a deadlift and I've thought, I'm not sure if we're going to get this. And then I complete it, right? I make my set of 5 or whatever, and that feels good. Nothing feels better than a heavy set of 5 on a deadlift when you didn't think you were going to get it, right? So that kind of feeling of accomplishment and survival, and you made it when you didn't think you were gonna, that to me is one of the main advantages of a patch-in event or a selection event, a Minuteman selection event. Knowing that you made it. Knowing that not only did I make it, but that guy made it. And I know how hard it was because I went through it, and that guy made it too. And so there's some mutual respect and camaraderie that gets built there. There's some mutual, there's natural team building, right? People bond in suffering. That's just how it happens. This is why the military does the things that it does with boot camps and trainings and whatever, because mutual suffering bonds people together. That's just one of those facts of human nature. So I think that building that into the selection event of building in a mutual respect for one another, because I know that it was miserable, and you know it was miserable, and we both made it, and we both didn't. And there were points where we both thought, "Wow, I don't know if I'm going to make it," but we did. And I know I have that mental resiliency now that I didn't necessarily know I had, right? And I know that they have it now, and there's a growing team cohesion in there, and I think that's very important. I think that's very important and very good, and that to me is one of the main values. The other value is we, as a American culture currently, do not have rites of passage. And I think that's a bigger deal than we realize. So, I grew up in a time where all rites of passage have basically been eliminated. You, if you're watching this, likely did too. I don't know if we've really had rites of passage in America for probably close to 100 years, if not maybe a little longer than that. Somewhere around that mark, I think, is pretty safe to say. So, yeah, if you're watching this, I would argue you didn't grow up with rites of passage. Maybe you had some niche special thing, right? And if you went in the military, I think that's maybe one of the last remaining rites of passage, right? If you made it through boot camp or whatever. You hear people talk about like going through the crucible, which is like the last 3 days of Marine boot camp. I think they still do that. I don't know. Not in the Marines, never was. And they get the globe and anchor at the end of the 3-day crucible, right? And the amount of like pride of this rite of passage of once a Marine, always a Marine. Like, I think that's really cool. I understand how that's a rite of passage. But in general, as a society, we don't have those. Again, unless you go to these niche things. And I think making a Minuteman Selection Day a rite of passage is a good thing. I think that's a helpful thing. Men want to be respected, affirmed, and welcomed by other men they respect. Again, universal human nature. And like a knight makes another knight, you know, in the Middle Ages, like any knight could knight someone else and make them a knight. So, things aren't that different. Any man who's respected by other men can return that respect to other men. And again, I think this goes deeper than we give it credit for. If you have other men that you respect, and you know that they respect you, and I'm talking about like that, you know what I'm talking about here, right, man? Like that mutual male respect of their abilities and their shall we say prowess, their danger. You know, tangent here. I worked a job once with this young kid who was like 20 years younger than me, and we were driving and doing furniture delivery, or not furniture, cabinets. We were delivering cabinets and other like millwork, woodworking stuff. So we were in a truck together for like 4 to 8 hours a day, depending. And we're driving around all the time, so naturally we're talking and hanging out. And one of the things that this kid said that I really liked was, he's like, I look at that other guy over there, and I'm like, I don't fear him, Now this kid was much bigger than me. He was like 6'4", like 270, 300, I don't know. He was a big boy, okay? And, he's like, I don't like fear that man. Like, I don't fear him. And I always thought, man, that's a really good, like, metric observation of male respect, If you look at another guy and you're like, yeah, I could trounce through that guy, you don't respect him. You automatically don't respect him. If you look at him and you're like, I don't like him, but, if we had to do this, like, this is it's going to be tough. I think I could maybe still do it, but, like, there's an amount of fear there, it might be tough. Then there's a natural respect building there, right? And so I like that. I like that fear concept of gauging respect. But I think that, if there are other men that you respect for their prowess and their danger, and they respect you for the same thing, that's a bolstering feeling. That knowing that they respect you, knowing that you respect them, that's a bolstering feeling. And so I think that's one of the things that we can do with Minuteman teams to make them effective, hardened, healthy teams, is that there is a respect that is granted and given. Hey, you made it through this super hard thing. We know it was really hard, and we respect you for making it through. You're one of us now. I mean, just saying those words, sitting here, I think, ooh, I get chills, I get tingles, because, again, I think that is one of the longings of the male heart. Your wife can't give that to you. Your wife can do a lot of things. Having an amazing wife is a wonderful thing. I love my wife. She's absolutely amazing. Wouldn't be where I'm at today without her. But that's something she can't give me. That's something my kids can't give me. Something my dad actually could probably give me, right? And if you have a good relationship with your dad, that's something your dad could give you. But likely your dad wasn't in the headspace to even think about that. Mine wasn't. And I love my dad. Good dad. But again, like, that's just not something he grew up with, right? No one ever said that to him. So here we are. And I think that when we think about, again, welcoming other respectable men, welcoming men into the respect circle. I'm going to keep using this word. I apologize. My word usage of that will probably be through the roof on this episode. But that's very important, and it's affirming. And it's something you can't get anywhere else. You can only get that from other men you respect. And with that kind of confidence, that kind of bolstering, that kind of galvanizing, you can do amazing things with that, right? Why do you think that these SEAL teams and these other elite military units are so effective? Why do you think they never quit? Well, part because they select for that, right? Selection events. They're selecting for people who don't quit. They're trying to weed out. They are aggressively, ruthlessly trying to weed out anyone who's ever going to, have a whisper of quitting. I understand that. But also, the synergy effect there is that then you are surrounded by those other men who you know would never quit. And so there's a respect given there. And I just think that's, again, more important than we know. So I think, again, one of the things the military gets right, and one of the things that I think you should do in your Minuteman team selection day, is have few metrics. And what I mean by that is, you don't need them to make run times. You don't need people to do so many push-ups in 2 minutes. It's not a physical fitness test per se. It is ultimately a mental grit test, right? When we did ours, I told my guys, the only thing you got to do is not quit. The only thing you got to do is not quit. Okay? And then I made it physically grueling because I wanted to stress them out and get them to that point, right? And we played different memory games in there, intermixed with ardent physical tasks. I'm not going to tell you all the physical tasks. One, because my boys will probably watch this, or they might, and I don't want to give it away. But two, more importantly, I'll tell you right now, the physical tasks don't matter that much. If you're going to do an event for 8 to 10 hours during the day or whatever, and they're just doing little things all day, that's going to wear you out fast. I promise, If you're doing some rucking, you're moving some heavy weight, and you're doing some low crawling, and you're doing some battle drills, and you're mixing in some push-ups and some patrolling and some air squats, and maybe some hill sprints or whatever. Again, it doesn't really matter. I'm telling you guys right now, you need to have a general plan, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is that starts to stack over time. And even with breaks and lunch breaks and, trying to work in some mental breaks in there, it still stacks. And by the end of the day, they're beat, right? So I think you need to don't be as concerned with what to actually do. Go to your favorite AI and have them generate a made-up schedule for you based on how much time you have, and modify it. Okay, that's the least difficult thing to do. I think the most difficult thing to do is to execute it in such a way that you are building that mutual respect. You are building, the purpose of it is to bind us together. That's the purpose of it. I think that is the most difficult part. And I think, again, you can err on the side of I'm your drill sergeant and I'm going to yell at you and I'm going to be a jerk and I don't care if you hate me and whatever. But that's not going to work in your context, I would argue. In the professional military, yeah, of course it works, because you're the boss, right? You're the team sergeant. So it doesn't really matter what they think of you or don't. They have to do it. That's how it works. And if they don't like it, well then, meet me out behind the motor pool and bring a water source and we're going to do push-ups until you cry. You know what I mean? You can do that. That's not I don't know if it's a big deal. I don't know. But my point is, you that's within the realm of possibility, right? It's within your rule and authority. Can you really do that with guys that you're friends with? Not really. Not in the same way. So you have to maintain helpful relationship, and while pushing people beyond where you thought they could go. And I think that's the art of a Minuteman selection event thing. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't know. We went out and did stuff, and it was a good time. And we're gonna do it again because some other guys want to get patched in, and we're gonna continue to grow our thing. I think that's important. But again, you have to do it in that context of, we're in this together. We are knights of the round table, maybe the slightly oval table, I don't know. And we are working towards something together, and we're building a respectable culture here. And I would just say all of that outright. Like, I don't think that's weird to say outright. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. Yes, this will be difficult. A lot of it, throughout the day, I did not tell people what was next or what we're doing, or you know what I mean? It's just one thing at a time. And so there was an added mental stress factor there. Again, that's more like how to do it, but I don't tell people what's going to happen, because that's part of the challenge, is just not knowing what's next and figuring it out as you get there, right? The other thing I think you should do if you decide to do a Minuteman selection event thing is, again, you want people to make it. You want it to be very difficult, but you ultimately want them to succeed. And I think it's cool to say to people, hey, I want you to succeed today. I'm going to say and do things that I normally wouldn't do. Don't take it personally, because I want you to earn it. I think you can say that based on your relationship. But one of the other things that I think is important of a selection event then is, if you do a patch-in event like this, there will be some people on your team who have it, some people who don't, either because they failed or because they don't think it's worth it, or they're not that into it, or whatever. But I would tell you that if you do it, being patched in has to mean something. Now, there's a danger here of creating like a inner clique and inner circle, and the people who are patched in and just the plebs. You don't want to do that. You want to maintain team cohesion and relationship and whatever. But at the same time, you have to honor the patched in. It has to mean something. It's like in our current culture or current nation, being a citizen really doesn't mean anything, unfortunately. Right? What does being a citizen of America really mean, when anybody can come here and get government benefits and vote and get health care that I pay for? And a whole nother video, got lots of rage about that, right? Being a citizen doesn't mean anything. It just means that I pay for foreigners. But in your club, in your crew, in your team, being patched in should mean something. And maybe it's as simple as the patched in guys are your team leads. Or maybe it's like if something comes down and there's a tie-breaking vote, the patched in guys always win the tie-breaking vote. Or they get to choose first. Or, if you're assigning team leads for the day, again, it's the patched in guys. Or if two guys want to do the same job, like they both want to be your BAR gunner or your designated marksman, and one's patched in, one's not, patched in guy gets it. Like, it has to mean something. I see that my battery's going to die. We'll be right back. Battery replaced. Thanks. So, the being patched in, like I said, has to mean something. And I think the danger is that you would not have it mean something. It would not mean that they're, a citizen of your team. And then, 6 months later, be like, well, what's the point? We went in, we did that. I mean, yeah, it was cool. Yeah, we learned some stuff here. But, we're all basically the same anyway, so why put yourself through the suffering? Like, why make it matter, Frank hurt his knee for 3 weeks trying to do that. And what? We're all basically take the same votes anyway. We all basically decide what to do together anyway. So I think that's the danger, that you'd be too egalitarian. And then the other danger is on the other side, that you'd be too exclusive, right? And I think it has to be somewhere on the quasi-exclusive side. Not right in the middle, but just a little bit towards the exclusive side. They're like, hey, this means something. It's a sign of your commitment to this team and what we're trying to accomplish here, and your dedication to be the best amateur you can be, right? And not to be, not that you take this seriously, So I think that's an important thing to do. So now, I guess we should say this too. Like, look, having a selection day or a selection event for your Minuteman team might not even make sense depending on where your team is at, right? If you guys have only been training together for 6 months and nobody knew each other until 8 months ago, well, now to bring in this super intense thing, probably not a good idea, right? You got to think, you got to use your brain. You need to have some relational bank in there. You got to have some what's equity? That's what I'm looking for. You need relational equity in order for this to be a good idea. But if you've been training with a group of guys for a couple of years now, and you all know each other pretty well, and you all trust each other pretty well, and you all respect each other pretty well, this might be a good idea. It might be the thing that's kind of like the next level for you and your team here to continue to build that deep team cohesion and trust and respect. It also might give you something to physically train for, right? It's going to give you something to do those burpees for and lift those barbells for. Like this would be a good event to help people continue to hone their skills. So that's the general idea there. If you need me to come out and run your selection event for all of you, and I can be the professional jerk, I'll do that. That'd be fun. Shoot me an email. Let's do that. I'll come out. I'll run some Minuteman Selection Day events for you. You just got to pay for my travel and time. But I'll come out. It'll be fun. Come on, we'll have a lot of fun. So, but I think there's a lot of value in that, right? There's a lot of value in running this kind of event that helps bind your team together and make it cohesive and not, what am I trying to say here? And not just another day in the office, not just another training session, but a special event that marks you as acceptance into other men that you respect, a special event that builds that team cohesion, a special event that formalizes your team a little bit. And it's like I said, depending on where you are and your team is, that might not be beneficial for you, right? It might not be a good idea for your team. I think viewing it primarily as a team event and not an individual event is one of the big benefits here. So I hope this gives you something to think about. I hope that as you think about your team and your friends and you think about selection events, that maybe this would be something that would pop on your radar that you would think, I think we should try to plan for one of those in the spring or whatever. And it'll give our guys something to work towards. If, again, to shill my own things here, is there a calling shilling if you're selling your own stuff? I don't know. I wrote a little book about this, Minuteman 202. And it's about a year of training, okay? And it gives you different things to train through with the team. If you haven't done something like that before, do that first. And then, again, when we're talking about building in that mental grit, that team cohesion, that I'm never going to say die attitude, I think a selection event is one of the more helpful things you can do for that. I think as a precursor to that, you could do something like a team challenge event. Like, hey guys, we're going to go out and we're going to ruck this, 10, 15, 20 mile stretch of road from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., Like, that'd be pretty cool. That's a good team challenge event. And the goal there isn't to see who makes it and who doesn't. The goal there is that everybody makes it. We're going to make it together, That'd be cool. I did that once. I think we did a 10 miler. It was the longest I ever rucked in my life. My legs hurt for like 2 days. I did not drink enough water and have enough electrolytes, most importantly. My legs cramped up pretty bad. So I think that those are some helpful things to do it again. Build the team cohesion, get through the selection event. Maybe it would be a tool for you that's appropriate. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. Only you can make that decision. I'm just here to offer you options. Until then, do